Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my series of RHCE practice sessions where I am preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers again for watching another video, as well as invite everyone, if you're watching and have not subscribed, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware of when new content comes available. Also, feel free to leave comments with the video. You can ask questions, leave critique, leave praise. I will respond as I have both time and ability to do so. So I've been looking forward to doing this particular practice session for a while because this is where we're going to start doing what I would consider essential basic configuration for an environment that is managed by Ansible. Now, all the stuff that I've done in the videos prior to this, this is valid stuff, but I'm always having to enter credentials and all that kind of thing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you're in an environment that has lots of nodes, then you're probably going to be using SSH key authentication and such for. So that brings us to what the topic of this particular practice session is going to be, and it's under the Configure Ansible Managed Nodes section of objectives, and we're going to be creating and distributing SSH keys to manage nodes. I do want to remind you that these videos are not intended to be authoritative information, nor are they intended to be tutorials. However, I do try to have the information as accurate as possible, and perhaps as you watch me go through these objectives and maybe troubleshoot some problems and such, you'll get some ideas about how to troubleshoot and the like, and that will hopefully help you with your own RHCE preparation. So getting right into it, I'm going to SSH into my Ansible control node, and this is actually a fresh install of Red Hat Enterprise Linux with a couple of exceptions. I went ahead and installed Ansible, and also I have initiated an SSH connection to each of my nodes, and I actually have 20 from one of the previous videos. And I did this to where I would have something in the known host file. I did a little bit of checking out Dr. Google, and I saw something about SSH key scan, which the idea behind that is pretty good, but I'm choosing not to use it for this, mainly because it does potentially open up some in the middle issues. And so I'm not sure if that's a tool I necessarily want to get in the habit of using. So to spare you a little bit of time in the video, I manually SSH'd into each of them and trusted the key for you. So that being said, there are a couple things that we need to do before we're able to actually work with our SSH keys. Now, one thing I'm going to do is create a user specifically for managing Ansible. I'm not sure if you'll have to do this on the exam. They might just have you, as root and doing everything as root. There's no way for me to know, and even if I did know, I wouldn't be able to tell you because of the NDA. But I'm going to assume that I'm given the task of create a user for managing Ansible and be able to have that user authenticate with SSH keys. All right, so we're going to create our user, and we're just going to do sudo user add Ansible, feed it my credentials there, and that's it. I have my Ansible user. Now, I'm not going to set a password for this user because just a couple of things that I've read, and of course, I'm not a master of Ansible or Ansible environments by any means. I'm still very much in my learning stage, but from a security perspective, it might make sense to not give this user a password. So that way you would have to you'd have to access this user from another account of which would have, a password set. So I'm just going to sudo su-l, and we're going to go into the Ansible account. So I'm now as the Ansible account, and I'm in my home Ansible directory. So what I want to do first is create myself an SSH key. So let's do SSH keygen, and I'm just going to keep all the defaults. Not going to give it a passphrase. And so what this will make is our IDRSA and IDRSA or underscore RSA.pub, which is our public and private key. And so what we're going to have to do is get this to all of our managed nodes. All right. So a couple things that we need to do prior to that. I'm actually going to go back out of the Ansible user. I'm going to go back to my normal admin user where I have my SSH known host file. If I were to cat that, you're going to see that I've trusted the fingerprints of all of my little Ansible nodes in this. And so what I'm going to do is actually copy this file into the Ansible users SSH directory. So just to make life easy, I'm going to just change directory into here. So we'll cp known host to, well, actually I need to do sudo for that. Known host into home, Ansible, and then .ssh. All right, so that gets the file into where we need. Now, one thing I am going to do, sudo ls-l home ansible.ssh. Oops. I want to check out the permissions. Notice how the keys, you have, or at least for the public key, we're at what? Let's see, 644 for Ansible. So let me go ahead and chown the Ansible for home ansible.s/.ssh known, if I can spell, hosts. Invalid group Ansible. Odd. Did I misspell it? Yes, I did. I misspelled the group. Ansible. There we go. That works. And so let's do our long listing. So at this point, the Ansible user, if they were to try to SSH into one of these servers, that they're not going to have any issues with being asked to trust the public key. Now the problem here is we don't have any Ansible users on the servers just yet. So that presents a challenge of how do we do this? Now, there are a couple ways of handling it. And on the exam, remember the goal is to just make it work unless, there's a directive in your task that say you have to use some particular method to do this. But what I'd like to do for this video is kind of show you the Ansible way, or at least what I interpret to be the Ansible way of doing this. Now, one user already has access via SSH to these servers, and that's my Eddy admin user. So we're going to be leveraging that to be able to create our Ansible user for these particular servers. So to do that, let's see. First, I need to make me an inventory file. So let me do vi or let me go back to just my home directory. Vi inventory. I'll just do inv. And I'm just going to make a quick inventory here. I'm going to make another line. This will cover 10 through 20. All right, so what I need to do is create my user account Ansible, and I also need to give it a password, because otherwise or I guess, actually I don't need to do that. I just thought of this, because I already have the public key. So I could, oh man, yeah, I was expecting to have to make a password and then copy the key file, but I'll bet I can do that already. So let's see if we can put this to the test here. So we're going to make a playbook, and we're just going to call it setup ansible.yml. And here's what we're going to do. So name, configure nodes for Ansible. Hosts, we're going to do this to all, and the tasks. So first thing we need to do is make a user for Ansible. So we're going to do name user Ansible state present. All right. So the next thing that we're going to need to do, what I'm going to do, and I got this idea, or actually I just kind of do this if I'm planning making a playbook, but I saw this explicitly mentioned in the Sander Van Vogt book as far as a method of, if you have to make a playbook on the exam and there's multiple things you need to do, rather than completely flesh out every task, basically make yourself a task list and then go back in and do the pieces. So once the Ansible user is present, what I'm going to need to do is make the SSH directory for them, and I'm going to need to create, or rather copy, the id.pub to that. And I think if I think about this, that's all I need, because all the remote host needs to have is the public key for SSH, and then we should be good to go for that. So For making the SSH, we're going to use the file module, and the path is going to be home ansible.ssh, and the state is going to be directory. The owner of that is going to be Ansible. The group is going to be Ansible. And let's take a look at the permissions. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 640, I would imagine, for that. So, but we can take a look. So sudo ls-l home, or actually la, home Ansible. Actually, it is 700 for that directory. Okay, cool. So that's what I needed to see. So we'll go back into our setup, and we're going to make the mode. Go and insert mode here. Mode is going to be 0700. All right, so that's going to make the directory that we're going to copy the file into. So we need to copy the id.pub file. And what I'm going to do, just to make this a little bit easier for me, I'm going to go ahead and copy that file to my current directory. So sudo cp home ansible.ssh id rsa.pub. We're going to copy that to here. And I'm going to go ahead and take ownership of this. So that way I'll be able to, or I guess I could technically read it before, but anyway, I know I now have control over this file. So let's go back into our playbook, and we'll go into insert mode here, name. This is going to be copy the public key. So we're going to use the copy module here. And do I use path or source? Sometimes I forget between the file module and the copy module. So Ansible doc-s copy. Pretty sure it is source that I will use for that. Yep, src, source. So back into our playbook. All right, so src, and we're going to be running this just from the current directory. So really all I need to do is put id rsa.pub, and the destination for this on the remote host is going to be home ansible ssh, and we're going to set the owner to Ansible. We're going to set the group to Ansible, and we're just going to set the mode. Do I want to do 644 or 640? We'll just do 644. We'll do 644. So just as it is here. So at that point, that should be all that we need. All right. So I'm kind of looking over my playbook here, looking for some mistakes. I think we're good for this. One thing I like doing, Ansible playbook syntax check. That can help find some of the more like boneheaded mistakes. And all right, see, it's complaining. So it's complaining line 5. Let's see where I made a mistake there. Let's see, name, host, tasks. Oh, I see my problem. First of all, I want to give this an actual name. So let us see, create Ansible user, and state I need, actually my indentation is incorrect. So let me move the user back to where it's supposed to be. And so that should satisfy this better. So let's do our syntax check. All right, and it is still complaining. Man, I made a couple of mistakes with this. Let's see what else I have made the mistake for. So that looks right. File, path, state owner, group mode. That looks right. Copy, circ test. Let's see what the complaint was. So line 7, column 12. Not what I was expecting. So let's see. VI, VU is not going to work. I realize what I've done. Can't believe I overlooked that. Some of you watching are probably shaking your head in disbelief. So now this should work better. Let's see if it passes the syntax check, and it does. Now, notice it's complaining about about only localhost being available. That's because I have not made a configuration file outside of the default, and the default is looking for this in the default or in Etsy Ansible hosts for its host information, and or rather its inventory information. So I'm going to have to specify inventory. So we're going to do Ansible Playbook. This is the Playbook. Inventory file is going to be our inventory. I call it inventory or INV. Let's see. Did inventory. All right. So Ansible Playbook. Name of the playbook -I inventory. I want to become. I need to feed it my SSH password as well as my become password, because I haven't set any other thing up with this, but I know this user can do that. And I'm going to do C real quick. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to do kind of a dry run of this. And I'm also going to increase the forks to 20, just because I know it can handle it, and that'll get this done a lot quicker. So let's see what happens here. It's gathering our facts, and it would be creating an Ansible user, and it will be making, all right, so I'm going to stop this here. So I think we're good to go with this. I'm going to remove the -C, and let's kick off the playbook. So we're getting our facts. We've created the Ansible user. It's going to make that directory. Here's the money thing. Will the key get copied? All right, so nothing has complained. This is a good sign. So let's sudo back into our sudo su back into Ansible. All right, so we're in our Ansible account, and let's see, we have our known host. So in theory, I should be able to do SSH, not even give it a username, because it'll use your current username, labrel_an01, and it should, it's asking for a password, grumble. So clearly I have done something incorrect for that, because it should have the key. All right, so let's say that this is what we did. We need to troubleshoot. So let's go back out of this, and we're going to SSH Eddie admin at labrel_an01. We know the known host file worked because it did not ask for the fingerprint part of the connection. All right, I'm just going to sudo into root, so that way I can go through stuff and not be hindered. All right, so we're going to go into home Ansible. All right, so we have a .ssh. I can't believe it. I realize the mistake that I've made. What I don't need is the public key there. What I need is the text of the public key put into the known host file. I can't believe it. So on a positive note, we see that the playbook did exactly what we wanted, but that's not the desired result. But what I want to do, cat id rsa.pub. Oops. So we're going to cat ssh idrsa.pub. All right. So here's what we can do to fix this. Let's come out of here. Let's come out of here. The thing about Ansible is there really is no undo with playbooks. So what you have to do is write a playbook that does the opposite of what you want if you were trying to undo something. But since we have idrsa.pub already here in all of these, I wonder if we can just rename it to known hosts. And I'll bet we can do that. So let's do Ansible doc-s copy, because I'm pretty sure there is a parameter for remote source. Yep, remote source. Okay. So what I want to do is copy that there. Let's see if it'll do what I want. So let's get our playbook. So what we're going to do, we make another task. Name, we're going to call this fix the known host file. So remote source is going to be home ansible.ssh, and then this is going to be idrsa.pub. .pub, and the destination is going to be home Ansible.ssh known hosts. All right, and owner is going to be Ansible. Group is going to be Ansible. There's actually one thing that let's see, with known host, no. I can't remember off the top of my head what the permissions are default for known host as far as if it's 644 or like 640, but just for the sake of argument, we're going to do mode 644. That's going to fix the file, I believe. What I don't know is whether or not that's just going to rename it or if that's going to literally make a copy of a file. So I'm going to end up with known host and idrsa.pub. So let's get rid of this part and let's see what happens. All right, so just because I'm a little bit lazy, I'm going to use the up arrow to get to my little command here. And let's try this again. What? Okay, offending line, so I have a syntax error somewhere. That's what happens when you move quickly, and yep, I see what the problem is. None of these are at the right indentation. All right, that should work better for us. And actually, I just realized another mistake. Go into insert mode. Need to use the name of the module. So the takeaway for this for your exam is don't move quickly. I mean, yeah, you have to know about your time and such, but you don't want to make a lot of extra mistakes. That ends up costing you some time. Shouldn't take as long to run this time, I would think, because it doesn't have to make the user. It's just going to show that as okay. Doesn't have to make the directory because that's okay. Now we're going to... All right, so source or content is required. All right, so let's take a look at that doc one more time. S copy. No source is usually required, but content. But I thought with remote source, influence whether source needs to be. I see. Yep. So the remote source is a yes or a no. It is not the actual path. I'm making so many mistakes, but at least I'm recovering from them. So let's do this. So we're going to change source, change that to source, and remote source, yes. Okay, this should do what we want. We feed it my password, and become will use the same password. Checking our facts, the user's already there, folder's already there, and let's see what happens. We have a bunch of changed. All right, so now let us sudo su into Ansible. Clear our screen here, and let's ssh lab rel an01. Grumble, it is still wanting a password, so something is wrong. All right, let's exit and let's see if we can figure it out. So ssh addy admin at lab rel an01. We'll sudo into root. And let's go into home Ansible again. ls.ssh. All right, so we have known host, we have idrsa.pub. What am I missing? I just realized it again. I'm missing the name of that file. Should be authorized keys, not known hosts. I can't believe it. And some of you that are watching the video, you've probably tuned out by now because you're making these obvious mistakes, Eddie. But, these practice session videos are really not, there's the editing that I do for this is primarily just to increase the audio levels. And also if there's something that takes forever, I'll edit out 30 seconds worth of waiting. But little things like this is how it is, and this might happen on the exam. You might be tired or whatever. It's 9:26 at night where I am now, and you'll probably be making some mistakes. So what this does tell us though is it simply made a copy of the file. It did not remove any of the files. So now that we know that, let's make our way back out and let us fix our playbook. All right, so what I'm going to do with this, actually, I'm going to remove a couple of the tasks here. And I'm doing that because we really don't need to do them. So now we are going to basically change known hosts to authorized keys. And then we're going to make another task. I'm just going to call it cleanup. And this is going to be, we're going to use the file module and path. We're going to do a loop here, item. And state is going to be absent because we want to delete these files. We're going to do loop. Our first file is home ansible.ssh.known hosts. And the second file is going to be home ansible.ssh and idrsa.pub. So this should clean up after ourselves and should finally give us the configuration that we need to be on these servers. So let's give it a go. I can't believe I made that mistake putting it as known hosts. But it happens, and you recover the best you can. So we'll gather our facts, and it failed. What are you complaining about? Source. Maybe if I spell known host right, that will help. So here is Raw Eddie on YouTube making mistakes right and left. So if I'm ever in the market for another system administrator job and you're one of my interviewees watching this, know that I generally don't make this many mistakes, but it's apparently happening tonight. That makes me happy. We see changed. All right, it's getting rid of those files. Okay, so moment of truth. Sudo su into Ansible username or Ansible user account. Clear our screen. SSH lab rel an01. I can't win. Lab rel, not hrel an01. And we're in. All right, so we did our key-based authentication. Just for giggles, let's ls our SSH directory. We see just authorized keys. Let's ls-l so we can see the permissions that it was set. All right, so without all of the mistakes, we have now going to use the Ansible method for getting this key to the authorized keys file on labrel, and then this will be true for all 20. So let me exit out of this. I can just pick SSH labrel an20, and I'm in as the Ansible account, which is what I'm going to be using for doing the configuration. Now, the other thing I could have done was generate my SSH key as I did, and then do SSH copy ID to all of the different servers. But doing that would have required me to have created a password for the Ansible user, which is doable via Playbook. But I figured this might be kind of one extra layer of protection for that Ansible user on these remote servers, because eventually I would be giving this Ansible user a lot of privileges, because that's the user that's going to be doing all the stuff on the server. So, the only possible way to log in as this Ansible user, unless you're logged in as an admin user already on the server and you SU into the user account, is you're going to have the key for that Ansible user to be able to do it. So let me look at the objective one more time, make sure I didn't miss anything. Well, I think it was fairly straightforward. Create and distribute SSH keys to manage nodes. Well, I think we did that. We did our SSH copy ID, and you went through the rigmarole and survived 20 minutes worth of me making silly mistakes to eventually get the key to all of the managed nodes. So again, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite you, if you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. If you enjoyed the video, either got some laughs out of my mistakes or learned something from it, or just enjoyed it in general, make sure you do click that like button. It helps the channel a good bit. And if there's anyone out there that you think would benefit from receiving the video and watching the mistakes and the like, of course you can actually see me smile here because you have a screen capture going on, but make sure that you share the video with others. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch. Thanks for bearing with me through my errors on this video, and I will see you the next time.